Chapter 46, Splash, Scream, Surprise. It was cold. Too cold for clansmen to burn crosses, too cold for nightingales to warble, too cold for sitting on the steps. But Stella couldn't sleep this December night, so even though she knew her parents would disapprove, she tiptoed outside to think. She took a walk on the banks of Kilkenny Pond, trying to ignore the nippiness of the night and the troublesome memories of Mama's ordeal. Despite her heavy woolen jacket, the cold still seemed to ooze into her bones. She figured as it was about 3 a.m. and nothing stirred. The sky was so clear that the glint of stars, the glimmer of the moon, shimmered across the pond. Occasional small circles radiated from the center of it. Stella stopped and watched, then looked to the heavens and gave a simple prayer of thanks. Mama now lived with a great deal of pain, but she lived. She lived! Papa had carved her a sturdy cane. The blisters and sores had mostly healed, the shortness of breath all gone. Her leg remained swollen and discolored, however. Dr. Hawkins said it might get better, might not. To Stella, it seemed a small price to pay to live. Yawning finally, Stella turned back home. She hoped Jojo had remembered to bring in firewood. The logs had just about faded to ash when she had tiptoed outside. But before she had managed a pair of steps, she heard a splash, followed by a sudden scream. Concentric rings grew larger and larger on the water, then gradually disappeared. An owl hooted. The wings of birds that had been sleeping flapped in surprise. Stella froze until the second scream came. This one louder, more desperate. "Help!" came a cry. "Help me!" Stella moved toward the sound, toward the splashing and wild thrashing that followed another gurgled cry. "I can't swim! Help me!" Trying to find the source of the scream, Stella raced around the bank of the pond, then stumbled to her knees. She looked to see what she'd tripped over. A pair of girls' shoes? Out a few feet, a pale arm extended from the water, reaching for the sky. A head bobbed up momentarily and just as quickly disappeared. Stella didn't pause to think. She ripped off her jacket and plunged into the water, gasping as the cold grabbed her, soaking through her hair. A feeling she hated. "Mama's gonna kill me for messing up my hair," she thought insanely, wondering at the same time why such a ridiculous thought had come into her head. She swam hard toward where she'd seen the person go down. Stella could swim, but she preferred not to. Most colored girls, she knew, felt the same way. They didn't swim because it took a whole Saturday afternoon to get your hair pressed and braided, and it was just too much trouble to mess it up on purpose. White girls wouldn't understand. The water was deeper than she had expected, and oh, so very, very cold. Still, Stella swung her arms through the water, searching. Her fingers were growing numb. Still she searched. Her feet felt like stones. She searched until she couldn't bear it. She had to get out of here or she'd die too. She propelled herself under one last time, and she hit something. Stella grasped at it. An arm! She pulled. The person dug their fingernails into Stella's shoulder. Stella twisted away, but the girl held on to that arm. She kept pulling until a head, a girl's, popped above the surface, gasping and choking. The girl clamped onto Stella, grabbing at her, dragging them both down, thrashing under the waters of Kilkenny Pond. Stella kicked and kicked, forcing them back up to the surface. "Stop!" Stella cried, when their heads broke the surface once more. "Stop or you'll kill us both!" Sputtering and choking, the girl kept pulling at Stella's arms, hair, anything she could grab. "Can't swim," she gasped. "But I can. Stay still. Don't move. We're nearly to the shore." At this point, feeling more angry than frightened, Stella with strong, sure strokes slowly made her way to the bank of the pond. The girl clung to her desperately, but she stopped flailing while Stella made sure the girl's head stayed above water. When her feet could feel the bottom, Stella heaved the girl onto the bank. She was surprisingly heavy. When at last Stella had her safely up on the grass, the girl's eyelids fluttered open. She looked around in alarm, then rolled over and threw up, water splashing everywhere. Stella helped her sit up, and, finding her own coat, wrapped it around the girl's thin shoulders. Her long blonde hair was a tangled mess, and her blue eyes looked wild. It was Paulette Packard. Stella stared. "Dr. Packard's daughter? Are you all right?" Stella finally asked. When Paulette nodded, teeth chattering, Stella asked, "What in the blazes were you doing in the pond in the middle of the night?" Paulette looked around in a daze, then buried her face in her hands and burst into tears. Stella, mystified, let her cry until she was too shaking with cold. "So you decided to go for a midnight swim?" she finally pressed. Paulette wiped the tears against Stella's coat sleeve. "No," she said at last. "It's pretty obvious I'm not much of a swimmer." "Well, that's for sure." Paulette pulled Stella's jacket tight. You saved my life," she suddenly exclaimed, as though stunned by this realization. "Oh my goodness, you saved my life. Thank you. Oh, thank you." "Yeah, I guess I did," Stella said, her teeth now chattering. "Look, we have to get to my house," she added, "or we'll catch a pneumonia or something." Paulette hesitated. "It's just down the path," Stella explained. She started to stand. "Wait," Paulette said. "I need to explain." Stella waited. Fatigue was quickly replacing the adrenaline. Her skin felt frozen. She wanted to go home, but she asked again, "So why were you in the water?" "I like the pond at night," Paulette replied. "My daddy would tan me if he knew. It's a good piece from my house. Lots of times I just come to sit and think." Stella thought about this, surprised. "Me too," she finally answered. "Well, tonight I came out here because my parents were fighting. Again. They never even noticed that I'm gone." "Does this happen a lot, the fighting?" Stella asked. "Yeah, pretty often." Paulette stared at the ground, her hair dripping around her face. "Sometimes it gets so bad I have to get out of there." She looked up at Stella. "I like to write. Every once in a while I bring a notebook out here and I write about animals and stuff. Anything to get my mind off the things going on at home." Amazed, Stella asked her, "So why did you take your shoes off? It's freezing out here." Paulette started crying again. "I was, being stupid. I thought maybe—" "You didn't go in on purpose." "I didn't, I swear. Well, not really, but I was just so upset. I figured if my daddy—" She dropped her head and sniffled. "If I got, sick with something really awfully bad like pneumonia or cholera or something—" "You can't get cholera from cold water," Stella scoffed, crossing her arms. I know. But I wanted to get sick with something really bad. So he paid attention to me for a change. He's a doctor. If I had to go to the hospital or something, maybe he'd remember he had a little girl. Maybe my folks would stop fighting." She started to cry again. Stella frowned. She wasn't sure how to react to the shivering white girl, how unhappy she had to be. Paulette continued, "But the second my shoes were off, I changed my mind, and that's when I slipped. That's the truth. Golly, the water was so cold." "Amen to that. It was butt-freezing cold. Plus, you almost drowned me," Stella added, her whole body now trembling. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My father will be really angry when he finds out," Paulette said even more miserably. "Not glad you're safe?" "No. He'd first be worried I might have told anybody about what's going on at home." "Your father is mean," Stella said bluntly. Paulette raised her chin. "I know." "He hit me once when I was little. He made my mother cry." "I'm really, really sorry, Stella." Paulette took a deep breath. "He's hit me, too." "Really?" "I've learned to stay out of his way." Stella dug her toe into the muddy ground. But the fury she felt toward Dr. Packard flared up, and now there was no holding back. Your father wouldn't treat my mother when she got bit by a snake. He had some of the anti-venom that could have helped her." She yanked the jacket away from Paulette and wrapped it around herself. "But He refused to share it with a colored lady. "Oh, no," Paulette cried out. "Maybe I can talk to him about helping her in the morning, even though he roughs me up sometimes. I know he loves me. He gives me money and buys me stuff." Water continued to drip from the ends of her hair. But Stella did not care, not one little bit. She shrieked, "You don't understand, Paulette. My mother could have died. Died! Do you hear me? It'd be too late for your daddy to do anything." Paulette's pale face went even paler still. "Oh, Stella, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive my father." She climbed shakily to her feet and reached out her hand. Stella backed away, too livid to stop. "Let me tell you something about your sweet daddy. Your father is a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I saw him near this very pond burning a cross. I saw him on the road after the Spencer house got burned down. I saw him. I saw your daddy." Now Paulette poked a toe in the dirt. "Don't you think I know? I watch my mother starch and iron that stupid white uniform every single week. He's prouder of that uniform than he is of us." "Proud? People have lost their lives because of the Klan." "It's been like this all my life," Paulette confessed. "He's always ranting and raving about how awful colored people are. That's when he's not yelling at my mother and smacking her around." This caught Stella up short. "He hits your mother too?" "All of the time. She's really good at covering the bruises." Stella didn't get it. Why does she let him get away with it? Paulette shrugged. "He's the town doctor. He's got money in a town that's mostly broke. They get the best pew in the church, the best tea times at the golf club in Spindale. She's not about to give all that up and be a nobody." "A nobody like me and my family?" Stella asked, the anger flaring again. Paulette looked away. "My mother almost died and will never be healthy again. And it's your father's fault." Stella fumed. "I'm gonna tell." Then, to Stella's utter surprise, Paulette touched her shoulder and said, "I think you should." Stella blinked hard. "I wasn't expecting you to say that. I wasn't expecting you to save my life." Paulette replied, offering Stella her hand for the second time. Stella hesitated, but this time took it. After a moment, she said, "I'm going to take you to my house. It's freezing out here. We got to get out of these wet clothes and talk to my folks. They'll know what to do."